Something big is happening right now, and it all revolves around what the youngest generation of adults is, or more importantly, isn't drinking. A massive cultural shift is underway. And in this explainer, we're going to break down what's really going on with Gen Z and alcohol. Okay, let's just kick things off with the big number. Data from Georgia Southern University shows that adults in Gen Z are drinking a full 20% less than millennials did when they were the exact same age. That is a huge drop, and trust me, it's not happening by accident. So this really brings up two giant questions that we're going to dig into. First, why is this happening? And second, what does this whole sober shift mean for our social lives, for businesses, and, for the future of drinking culture itself?
All right, so the first theory that researchers started looking at points to a pretty major change in how young people are even starting their adult lives. So there's this idea called prolonged adolescence. And as you can see, the number of young adults still living at home at age 27 just jumped like crazy between Gen X and millennials. And that trend is only getting stronger with Gen Z. Now, this isn't just about money. It affects social behavior. I mean, think about it. Living under your parents' roof usually means a little less freedom, less privacy, and probably fewer of those big social gatherings where drinking is the main event. But look, living at home, that's just one piece of the puzzle. The much bigger, more common explanation points to a complete change in mindset. What we're really seeing is a totally different set of values. Gen Z is incredibly aware of the consequences. We're talking everything from the long-term health risks to the very immediate fear of an embarrassing picture going viral forever. They're putting productivity ahead of partying. They feel way less pressure to just go along with the crowd, and they are actively trying to protect their well-being. And honestly, that kind of mindset just doesn't have a lot of space for a hangover. And this right here, this really drives the point home. A whopping 86% of Gen Z say their mental health is just as important as their physical health when they think about drinking. So for them, it's not just about dodging a physical hangover. It's about protecting their mental space too. And all of this has given rise to this huge movement you've probably heard of, the Sober Curious movement. Now, this isn't about strict sobriety or recovery programs. It's really about just being more intentional. Maybe it means having one drink instead of three, or jumping on trends like dry January. It's all about a more mindful approach to alcohol. So if Gen Z isn't drinking as much, what does a night out even look like anymore? Well, it's completely changing the game. Think about the old school night out, packed clubs, getting drunk. That whole model is kind of getting tossed out the window. The new vibe is much more controlled, a more curated experience. And a lot of the time, it's happening at home. The goal isn't just to get wasted. It's about genuine connection. And this is key. The drink options are exploding way beyond just boring old beer and wine. And here's a really big reason why they're staying away from those traditional spots. A huge 80% of Gen Z say they're worried about safety and harm in typical nightlife settings. So they're either actively looking for safer places to go, or they're just deciding to create that safe space themselves at home. So this new demand for a different kind of night has just blown the doors wide open for alcohol-free alternatives, and they're getting more interesting and sophisticated every single day. And when you look at what's actually selling in this new market, wow, there is one clear king of the hill. Non-alcoholic beer is just crushing it, holding on to more than 86% of the market. The big brands, the small craft breweries, they've all figured out that people want a great-tasting beer, just, without the booze. But it's not just about beer, not by a long shot. The innovation is wild. You've got ready-to-drink mocktails, CBD-infused seltzers, even non-alcoholic spirits that taste just like gin or tequila. And then there's this whole world of functional drinks with things like adaptogens or nootropics, which are basically ingredients that are supposed to help you chill out or focus. So the story seems pretty straightforward, right? Gen Z is healthier, they want different things, and the market is changing to meet them. End of story. Well, maybe not. And this is where the whole thing gets a major plot twist. A recent report from Rabobank is questioning this entire wellness story, and they're suggesting there are much bigger, deeper forces at work. And they are not pulling any punches. Rabobank's analysis calls all these popular health and wellness explanations greatly overblown. So if it's not wellness, then what on earth is it? According to Rabobank, the real reasons are, well, a lot less sexy. It comes down to structural and economic factors. We're talking student loan debt, the sky-high cost of living, not being able to afford to move out. The report's basically saying that Gen Z isn't just choosing to drink less. Their tough economic reality is kind of making the choice for them. And if you buy into this economic argument, it leads to a totally different and honestly pretty shocking prediction about what happens next.
So get this. This is the real bombshell from their report. They're predicting that once Gen Z starts to get a bit older, moves out of their parents' house, gets a little more financially stable, their alcohol consumption is actually going to go way up. They're not going to be sober forever. They're just delaying that heavier drinking phase until their life circumstances finally change. So, what's the real story here? Well, like with most things, it's probably not just one thing or the other. It's this messy, complicated mix. That cultural shift towards health and wellness, it's absolutely real. But so are the crushing economic pressures and the realities of life that are shaping Gen Z's decisions. You really can't separate one from the other. And that leaves us with the one big lingering question. Is this whole sober, curious movement a permanent change in how we relate to alcohol? Or is it just a temporary delay, a blip caused by economics that will eventually even itself out? The answer to that question, it's going to define social culture for years to come.